Hi guys, welcome back to the Movies app, whereby we are using Retrofit, Glide, and the Movie DB API to actually call latest movies, and as well we call the popular movies. We're manipulating the APIs with different functionality. So we're actually going to extend more on this application, whereby we're going to actually add a sort order. It will be very beautiful if we should have an application. Let me try to launch the movie app. Once we have our application, whereby you can use the grid. We have the grid details, and you can also have the details of the grid. Beautiful, which is actually loading perfectly using Glide. On the back button, you get to go back to the grids. But other settings, we would like to integrate a sort order. This is just one API. Call it the popular movies right there in the movie DB APIs. We can actually tweak more about we had the most rated movies. You can actually sort the grids based on the most rated. That's just what we're going to integrate right there in this application. So in the settings, now I will be clicking the settings now because we've not actually extended and built on this, so that it's not just going to crash the UI, but we're going to actually integrate the settings, whereby you have the ability to sort the grids based on different API calls. The second API call we'll be using now is the most rated. So we're actually going to do that, and I would like you to follow along on how we're going to create the settings, how we're going to use shared preferences to hold on to the state of the application, and how we're going to actually start or resume the application. We're going to actually be talking about the life cycle of an activity, and we're actually going to be setting our shared preferences based on that aspect. So I'll be moving straight to Android Studio. We have the source file. Before I dig in deep into Android Studio, I'd like to actually show you the APIs again. This is for the top rated call. We have for the popular. We're actually looking at the popular right there in the emulator, and you have the JSON beautifier to actually make you itemize the key value pairs of each array. I'll be heading straight back to the studio, and I'll go straight to the API. I want you to look at the API again. Right there in the client, we have the base URL and the service. We've actually pointed on getting the popular movie and also the top rated. So let us sort these different calls. From here, I'll be going straight to the menu. We have the menu main, which we've created earlier in this application, whereby we have the settings as the title, and we set the order and category to 100. Now we'll be extending more on this. In the values, we need to create the sort order right in the values. So I'll actually be creating an arrays XML right in the values. So follow along with me. I hope you've downloaded the source code at first, so that you'll be able to just continue from where we stop. So you're going to create the values resource file and call arrays.xml. So you click OK to actually get that set up. Now I have it right there on Git, so I need to always commit to Git so that it's just going to keep the present state of the application flowing, so that I won't have a backward compatibility. So just click on Yes to have that set up, and I'll start off with the resources. Let's have the resources. Now we're going to have the string array. With the name of what should we give it a name? I think we'll create anything of sorts right there. But let's have the name preference sort order. That's fine. Close it right there. Inside the array, we're going to have two items. For now, call at string. We have a string value of preference most popular. You see that there. That's for the first item. The second item, string. We have another string value for the preference. That's going to be highest rated. That's the two string array we'll be looking at. From here, I'll be creating the XML folder, where our preferences will be going. Now, right in the values, you create a new directory. We call that, will it be right there in the values? No, it's going to be right there in the layout. Let me collapse this. It's going to be right there in the rest. Sorry. So we're going to have the directory. I will call that XML. Okay. So inside the XML folder, we're going to have the XML resource, right, which is going to be the preference. The preferences. I need to put in .xml. It's going to catch that and commit. Let's commit that. So that's going to have a new code right there in Git. Now in our preference, we are talking about only a list preference. You should be familiar with this, right, from the basics of Android. When you create a preference, we have checkbox, we have toggle button, we have a lot, lot of preference widgets that you can use. But in this application, we'll be using the list preference, so because we're actually listing and checking on the right one we're using at the point in time. So that's why we'll use the list preference. Let's give it a title, and we'll call that sort order. We've created a string for that. Add string. Avoid to add code all string values. Just avoid it. Preference. Sort order label. That's fine. We're going to have the key, Android key, which we are also going to point to the string. Called the preference sort order key, and we're going to have the default value. There must be a default value for the preference. That means we'll use a default state before we start to change other states. Call the default value, and we're going to call the string. Since the first call is popular, let's maintain popular. Preference most popular, and we're going to have the entries, Android entries, which is actually going to point to the array. Now we need the array here. Call the pref sort order. Now we need the entry values. Same thing, the array and the preference sort order. Now we need to close that right there. Close the list preferences. That's fine. So you have our sort order right there. So now we need to create a settings activity. You can actually, we've actually done that earlier, but we need to build it up. You can actually do a tweak of your settings to make a different approach. Probably you want it without the top bar, or you want it with the top bar. When I talk about the top bar, I mean the title bar. If you decide not to want your settings that way, just make it a full page. Now I'm going to actually stick with that aspect of settings, create it in a full page without the title bar. So I'm going to head straight to the settings activity, which I'm right there now, and I will extend using the preference activity. Very good. Now we need to override the onCreate method. Public void onCreate, passing the bundle, save the instance state, and call the super onCreate, pass the save instance state. We get the fragment manager. Let's begin transaction, and we'll replace place with the Android ID, content, and instantiating with a new keyword of the settings fragment. That's right there in out of the box from Android settings fragment. Now we got to commit. You get that? Commit. So now let's create the fragment. Public static class settings fragment, which extends preference fragment as a preference fragment. Now we override the onCreate. That's an inner class. Don't forget, you can decide to have this outside the class. But for simplicity, let's have this done this way. You have the final, you have to specify the bundle to be final. Saved instance states. Now we call the super create, pass this to state, add preferences from the very source, XML preferences, which we actually created earlier. It should be X. So we have it set. We have the settings activity done, and now we can easily undo the settings of this particular application where we pass the sort order. Now let's move straight to the main activity where the whole logic still lies on, because that is actually going to be the main page which will be pointing at. And for us to actually implement this, we have a load JSON, if you can remember, that actually called the MovieDB API, which is the get popular movies. Can you see that's there? Calling the API service get popular movies. Now we need to replicate. We need one more API call, which will actually get the most rated. So for us to do that, I will just replicate. I'll be replicating the first JSON call, which I will now be named to probably JSON1 or something else. Just replicate that. Paste that right there. And now you have the second one. Just name this, probably name this 1. So it's actually going to be different from the first. And now you have it set. You can easily point your APIs. Fine, you still have the build config based on the API key. Telling if there's no API key, please obtain API key firstly from the MovieDB. And now you've instantiated your client, call on the API service. Now, instead of pointing to get popular movies, you just point to get top rated movies. I'll show you where that lies. Top rated movies, can you see that is there already? So we can easily look at it right there in the service and say get top rated movies. Back to the main activity. Fine. And you still have your call done without any change. Because it's actually going to use the same recycler view at the same adapter. You're not creating a new adapter for that. So you just need a different call. So with that, you're fine. Now you can work more on your shared preferences and do some other things. But before we continue, I would like to implement the shared preferences. Implement shared preferences, calling on shared preference change listener. That's fine. So now we're going to implement the methods for this. The first method is actually going to be the onShared preference changed. Let's actually do that below the options item selected. I'm going to override public shared reference changed about passing two parameters, the shared preferences, give it an object shared preferences, and the string, or the string of the key of the preference. Now we're going to log, let's log that for debug purpose. D, we call log tag, tell that preferences updated, so we'll be able to know if it actually worked. Now inside this on shared preference change, we're going to pass in a method called check sort order. So this sort order would actually make the tweak. Check sort order. Now let's get to undo that. It's going to be a private method, not exposed to other classes. Check sort order. It takes no parameter. Now it's going to call the shared preferences. Also the preference manager. Now we're going to get the default shared preferences. We actually set the default to popular. Now the string, another string, which is the sort order. That will be equals to the preferences get string. Now let's get a first string. How about we're going to call these, let me have space here so that we'll be able to see these. You get the string and you use your R to call the string and point it to the preference sort order key. You get that? Close that right there. Now you still call these for the most popular get string, and the string preference most popular. That's that. So you close that. That should be, this should be a comma. You're not closing the statement. It should be empty. You close it over here, and you now test if the sort order, just watch, is equals to most popular. Instead of passing at coding it, you use these.getString, which we now call our string, and call the right string value as preference most popular. So if it's most popular, what will happen? First of all, let's undo the debug so that we're actually going to have that set. We'll call the log tag. We'll pass it to the console that's sorting by most popular. So during this process, it's going to run this method. It's going to call the first JSON call, which is actually the first API call over here. Can you see this? It's going to call this method when you change the sort order to most popular. Else, let's log. console showing that it's sorting by vote average that's demonstrated. At this point in time, you're going to call the load JSON1, which is actually pointing to demonstrated. That's just how to make that call. You can see how simple it can be. But you still need to undo something here. You need to undo the on resume, very important, because there's going to be a change in transition, so you need to resume, like resuming the state, of the life cycle of that particular activity, so that's why we need to call the on resume. Let's override public void resume. Resume. Now we call the super on resume, and we also test if the movie list, which is the array list value, is empty, because definitely it's going to be they have a change of each preference. Go to passing check sort order. Just check sort order if it's empty, so that you have to fill that. Else we're not going to do something here. We'll get to it when we are talking about favorites. So we're not going to do nothing in the else statement. Just leave it that way. So check sort order if the movie list is empty. Now we need to integrate something in the on options item selected at the menu if the menu settings is being called, so that it's not going to crash, because we need to point it to somewhere. Now we need to actually point it to an intent. Create intent, which is supposed to instantiate the new intent, and this class, which points to the settings activity class. Now we start activity. I'll pass the intent as parameter. Beautiful. So with this now, the settings is being aware. Now the settings activity can be launched from the click of the menu, which ID is the menu settings. You can see that there. So that's beautiful. Now from here, we still need to register the settings activity in the manifest. But before we move further than that, let's look at how our sort order is going to actually be called. Let's understand how it's been done. Fine. On create method, you call the init views, whereby the swipe container is being instantiated and being passed in. Now the init views is actually going to call the progress dialog, show it up. It's actually going to set up the recycler view and also the movie list, call the adapter of the recycler view. It's actually going to test if the device is on the rotation or landscape. If it's not, it's actually going to give it a 2 grid. And if it's on landscape, it's going to give it a 4 grid. And there is going to be a notified data set change. And on load JSON, if you notice, it actually load a JSON. So instead of loading a JSON now, because this is just only pointing to one aspect, which is going to be myopic, it's not actually going to pick the movies rated settings we are trying to integrate. Now you need to replace this with check sort order instead of load JSON. Now on instantiator of the recycler view and sort, it's going to call the check sort order. Look at the check sort order now. But I'm telling you the processes of this application. So this check sort order will be triggered and the preferences will be called, to check if probably the sort order equals to this particular string from the preferences. Probably if you have changed the preferences or not. If it's not, probably it's still on most popular. It's going to load the JSON and pass it into the recycler view, which is the first JSON over here for the popular movies. Else, if probably peradventure you've changed the sort order right there in the preferences, it's going to call the load JSON1, which is actually going to be pointed to the most rated movie. Load JSON1, which is for the most rated movie. So that's how it worked, and it's actually going to check for the movie list if it's empty to change the sort order. I think that's beautiful. From here, we'll be going to the manifest. Let's register the settings activity. Very, very important. Now we have that. So I'll quickly register it and we'll move on from there. So we're going to pass in the activity with the Android name of settings, activity, and let's give it a label since it's not even going to show. Just let's fulfill our righteousness. Right? So we have it set. From here, I'll be actually testing this code. I want you to start by. Don't go anywhere. I'll be showing this in an emulator. So here we go with the application. If you notice, we're having the grid of the popular movies. This is Beauty and the Beast. Just keep track of the poster in the grid. Guardians of the Galaxy, Alien, the Fate of the Furious, Logan, and the Pirates of the Caribbean. We still have other ones being it anyway, but that's just for the first page. You're gonna have movie refresh to work. Now let's click on our menu button to have the settings. Now we have our sort order. Can you see that? So you click on this, is actually going to give you the list preference for sort order, either most popular or highest rated. So let's go for the highest rated to have a change of that. So we have that set and a back to our application. Can you see that there is a change? There's a sort order. This is actually now the most rated movie. If you should notice, the ratings is 8.7, 8.4. It's quite high. So that's the most rated movie. We have White Flash, we have Sherlock, Spirited Away, and so on. These are all movies that are mostly rated. So let's take a cue backwards and go to the settings. Let's have our sort order changed again to the most popular. Let's look at the most popular movies. Back again. Can you see that it's changed on the launch, on the resume of the activity? The preferences has been checked, and it noticed that the preferences have been changed to another API call, which is actually did the tweak. So that's just it. We'll actually still be improving more on this. Probably we'll be talking more right there when we get to the detail activity. We need to bring in a trailer. We need to add favorite. Users should be able to make favorite of each movie, and have that added to the sort, so you can easily sort by favorite movie again. So that's where we'll be heading to after this part of this particular tutorial. Thank you very much for hanging out with me throughout this tutorial, and please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Have a